Hi, this is Eric from Longbox Review at longboxreview.wordpress.com.
And this is Travis from Oddfellows Thoughts on YouTube.
Well, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you, Travis.
Happy holidays to you also.
So we are recording this today right before Christmas time, but the episode will not likely come out until after the New Year's, just depending on how rambunctious I feel about editing the episode and getting it out the door. And you know how that goes. Although I have
Oh
to
yeah.
say, Travis, normally the podcast takes a little break during the month of December, but I've been busy putting out episodes once a week, so this is a new thing for me.
Yeah.
And I know you've been busy doing your videos out there on YouTube, so
Yep.
it's
I
crazy.
have, but I pretty much said this next 2 weeks until after the new year. I'm done. It won't happen. I'll break down and I'll do videos anyway, but I said I'm not gonna.
Well, I was thinking about saying the same thing here, that I probably wouldn't be releasing an episode before the end of January, but I'm rethinking that. I have a couple of things that I wanna get out there before it gets too late. But I just wanted to remind everyone, speaking of the end of January-ish, Travis and I will be getting together and doing our third annual, I think, if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
our
Yep.
third annual Best of the Year talk. And we might be
Mm.
doing something a little different, a little special about that. We'll see. I got to work out the details.
Yep.
And like I said, we'll see. I'm hoping that will come to fruition and we'll be able to do something a little different, like I said, a little more exciting, hopefully. But we are here to talk about some specific comics that Travis and I wanted to discuss. But before we get to that, a couple announcements. And the first of that is, Travis, you saw the SaveRachelRising hashtag on Twitter here in the last several days?
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that. So apparently, Terry Moore has taken to the interwebs to kind of drum up support and, of course, sales for his book, Rachel Rising, which is a book that I read and enjoy very much. Apparently, sales are down, and he is considering having to cancel the series before he gets done with it. And for those that may not know about Terry Moore and his works, and I can't imagine why not, but just in case you do not, he has these incredible stories. He's an incredibly talented writer and artist, who is most well known, I think, for Strangers in Paradise. And he's also done, oh gosh, and also Echo, the series that came out a few years ago. And now his latest project is called Rachel Rising, which is a story about witches and revenge, and I'm guessing redemption come to the end of the story. Anyway, I certainly don't want to see the story end before its time, and so I'm here to do my own Save Rachel Rising plea to the listeners of the podcast, in case there are people out there who may not know about it or may have decided to not pick it up or wait for the trade. Certainly buy the trades, because the trades are excellent. It's good to read the story in chunks like that. But of course, I think for most comic publishers, and you have to remember, Terry Moore is a self-publisher. He doesn't have DC, Marvel, Image, companies like that helping him out. So you should buy the singles, buy the floppies. I know some people, that reminds me. So Travis, you and I have talked about this, I think, off mic, but some people don't like the term floppies. Have you heard that before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm excited by calling them floppies.
I mean, but you don't take offense to it. It's not like
No.
demeaning
No.
the art form or anything, right?
No.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I just, that's a term we used when growing up, you and I collecting comics back in the 80s, right?
Right. Hmm.
So I just continue to use it anyway. So this is my call to action, if you will, for people to check out Rachel Rising. It's a great book. It's wonderfully drawn. Terry Moore is just one of my favorite artists. Yes, it is a black and white comic, but man, what he does with black and white, with shading, with darkness and light, in a comic is just, I think, is incredible. So
So just to take that one step further, if you're inclined to want to help them out and whatnot by picking up the single issues, the floppies or whatever, where would one person do that at? Because I know you certainly can't just go to the store and buy issue 1 of Rachel Rising because it's like impossible to find. So I mean, so where do you? Is there a place you can start that's relatively current in the run, and not go? I have no idea what's going on.
I'm so glad you asked that. Because I forgot I needed to mention that. So go to terrymore.com, and that's where you'll find everything. And you can buy back issues directly from him, which is actually what I did. So when I got Strangers in Paradise, I came into it late, and I got the pocketbook editions. I think he had 3 or 4 of those out at the time that it was pointed out to me that these are great comics. I mean, I'd heard some noise, people talking online and people talking in comic book shops saying how good Strangers in Paradise was. But it's kind of like now with your reference to Rachel Rising, it's like, well, okay, where do I start? Where do I go? It being an indie comic, it's really hard to find those back issues because most comic shops don't stock those things or don't stock very many issues, right? So right. I got those. They did the comic shop I bought them from did have the pocket edition, and then he came out with Echo, and I decided to, because I enjoyed reading Strangers in Paradise so much in book form as opposed to single issues, I decided to wait until Echo came out in trade. And then eventually it came out in a complete edition. So you got everything, and it's like 3 or 4 inches thick. And so I got that and absolutely loved it. Again, that I ordered that through the shop. But when he announced Rachel Rising as his next project, I really wanted to get it as single issues. Read it as it was coming out because I love his work so much. But then I didn't because I had such a great experience reading Echo as a single volume. I thought, I want to do this. I'm going to do the same thing with Rachel Rising. And then, what was it, 2 or 3 months into the series, I was just hearing a lot of good things about it, and I regretted it. So I went online to terrymore.com, and he has a store there, and I was able to buy the first 3 issues from him directly, and he sent them to me. I got them. And then I've just continued to pick it up since then. So that there you go. That's where you go, terrymore.com. And I'm going to check that out just real quick. Make sure I got that right. And he's a funny guy on Twitter. I don't know if you follow him, Travis.
I don't.
Yep, terrymore.com. And then there's a store link that people can go and buy issues. And I'm just gonna check this real quick as we're talking to see what is available for Rachel Rising. Oh my gosh. There are certain printings that are sold out, it looks like. Yep, right now, but I'm sure that if there's enough interest, he will do another printing of these issues. But you can pretty much get everything online here at the store. And he's got a Rachel Rising #1 first printing, which he did not have before, so I had to get the second printing. I may have to go...
As we're doing some shopping now.
Go buy that first printing of issue #1. Okay. All right. So there you go. Any other things you want to say about or ask about Rachel Rising, Travis?
Nope.
Okie dokie. All right. So let's move on. And the second announcement is, so Travis and I are going to be talking about Forever Evil from DC, and a couple comics from Image, Jupiter's Legacy, and Revival. And Jupiter's Legacy is Travis's request to discuss, and Revival is mine. Although we're both reading those comics. With that in mind, we may be talking about specific plot points, so this may be a spoilerific episode, so you have been warned if you have not read these comics yet or you're waiting for the trades. If you don't like spoilers, then go ahead and wait and come back to this episode at a later date. So it's appropriate, Travis, that you are back on the podcast, on the big show, to talk about Forever Evil because I have to say the fans are requesting it, so to speak, because the numbers, the download numbers for our episode about Trinity War have been the biggest out of anything recently. So we did say in that episode that we would come back and talk about Forever Evil. And here we are to do so.
Yep.
And as people may recall, Travis was actually pretty excited about Trinity War, so to speak, and which is unusual because Travis has very publicly talked about how he does not like event books. And so here we have DC's very first event book since the New 52 launched, Forever Evil. And this is a 7-issue, I believe, right? That's 7 issues.
Yes.
Yeah, 7 issues. This is by Geoff Johns, writer. David Finch is the artist, and Richard Friend is doing the inks. And I have read up through issue 3, and all of the Justice League tie-in books, Justice League Dark, Justice League of America, say that 5 times fast, up through issue 25. And so we're just going to talk generally about Forever Evil now, and we'll get to the other 2 in a little bit. So Travis, everyone wants to know, how do you like Forever Evil?
Well, I can stick by my I don't like event books motto pretty well. There are little bits and pieces that are, somewhat interesting. The whole thing seems strange. I can't imagine what it's like to read just Forever Evil and not be reading the Justice League books. I almost feels like more interesting things happen in some of the Justice League books than are happening in the Forever Evil book.
Okay.
The Forever Evil book feels like it's kind of going through some motions, and that's it.
Yeah, hitting some major plot points and then moving on to the next thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And to tell you the truth, they all kind of blur together to some degree. Now, in the Forever Evil book, it gives us the backstory to is that the one that gives us the backstory to Ultraman? Or is that Justice League? See, they all kind of blur together to me, to some degree.
You get bits and pieces, I think, in Forever Evil, but no, you said Ultraman. You mean Ultraman or Owlman?
Ultraman, not Owlman.
Okay, because in Justice League 25, it was the big thing was Owlman's origin.
Owlman, right. But so is it? You got anyway. I don't know. It feels like we're just kind of touching on some points and nothing. I don't know. Like I said, it feels like so far, 3 issues in. Well, the first issue felt like we went backwards. There was all this energy coming out of the Trinity War. Boom! Suddenly the crime syndicate's there, and all this. They've obviously got one over on everybody. And then it felt like we spent an entire issue, kind of, I don't know, re-explaining and restarting the whole potential excitement of what was going on. And then these last 2 issues have kind of been plot points, is what it's felt like to me. It hasn't been that engaging or engrossing to me.
As a whole, yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah,
and like I said, I thought there have been more interesting things happen in the Justice League book itself than in the Forever Evil, and I would think the Forever Evil would be the book that it was really having the stuff go on in it.
Yeah, you would think, especially in the last, I don't know, I'll say, I want to say decade. Sounds like a long time, but it's not. It doesn't seem that long to me. But there was this big, if you recall, there's this big push from fandom about event books where you to get the whole story or to get a meaningful part of the story, you had to go read all those tie-ins. Right. And then there seemed to be, it seemed like, especially DC and Marvel seemed to react to that and say, okay, yeah, you know what? We hear you. And I remember certain people at Marvel during, I can't remember what event it was, but it was Brian Michael Bendis specifically who said, you do not need to read any tie-ins to get, the full effect of the story. And I don't remember if it was actually ended up being true for that, but it certainly doesn't seem very true for Forever Evil. And like you said, I agree with you. It seems like there's some more interesting things going on in the Justice League tie-in titles. And I haven't read any of the other tie-ins that are going on. Have you?
Which tie-ins are you talking about? I mean, I'm reading the Justice League ones. I'm getting the Forever Evil the Gotham one. I'm getting that one also, as far as those kinds of things go.
Oh, you mean that you're talking about the miniseries? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not those. There seem to be certain issues of other titles in DC's line that are called Forever Evil tie-ins, and maybe
I'm only getting those if they happen to be something something I normally select, right?
Yeah. Well, me too. But I'm not actively reading anything else besides that. But I am, I kind of lump the Justice League, the 3 Justice League titles in with this whole Forever Evil thing. So when I sit down to read my comics and I'm reading Forever Evil, I make sure I read that, and then I read all the 3 issues that came out the same month as that issue of Forever Evil. So, and anything else, if it happens to be a Forever Evil tie-in, I just, I read it, but I guess I'm not really lumping it in my mind to the other stuff. And I'm not getting any of the limited series that are Forever Evil. You said you were, though. What are you getting?
Yeah, I'm just getting the Gotham one because I wanted to see how I like Tomasi as a writer, so I figured I'd jump on, because normally those kinds of the kind of books I don't really want to read. But I like Tomasi as a writer, so I thought I'd jump on and read that one and see how the crazies versus the Blackgate people and Bane, how that all works out in Gotham, because that's what that was going to be about, was all the people from Arkham versus all the people from Blackgate as to who's going to control Gotham, since there's no superheroes in it. And it's had moments that have been cool, and it's had moments that, my eyes rolled back in my head so hard that I had a headache afterwards. So.
Yeah, I remember when that was announced and I saw Tomasi as the writer. That was the only factor that made me, think for a minute that I should get that series. Another one that I thought about as well was the Rogues one. Just because I like those characters. Mm-hmm. But I like those characters as they were before the New 52. I'm not I'm not up on those characters now and how they are, and I kind of use our friend Lee as a gauge.
Yeah.
for the Rogues.
Yeah.
And as I recall, he's not too keen on them either right now.
Ew. Not all, other than, hey, you could, it looks like Captain Cold is moving back more towards our traditional Captain Cold.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a few things I want to talk about, and that's one of them in these 3 issues of Forever Evil. So let's dive into that a little bit. I pulled out a few things that I found interesting in these issues, and then you feel free to do so as well. So issue number 1 of Forever Evil. So the crime syndicate has taken over, and really, there's a lot of that going on. Introducing the characters and just kind of the background. Like you said, you kind of get a rehash of the end of Trinity War a little bit. But it's Ultraman shows up and this is after the grid kind of turns everything off in the world, and Ultraman's flying around finding kryptonite, and that's when Lex Luthor encounters him and realizes, hey, that's not Superman. But the really interesting thing about this, and we'll get to the culmination of what I'm going to talk about next in Justice League 25. But the bit in number 1 is the reveal of Nightwing's identity to the world. They pull it. They captured him. They pulled his mask off. They say, this is Richard Grayson. And wow. So what does that mean for the Bat family? I don't know, because it's a New 52. I don't know how long Dick Grayson was with Bruce Wayne as Robin, and before he left and went off on his own to be Nightwing and all that stuff. I don't know the history here. But, my first thought was, well, Dick Grayson was was Bruce Wayne's ward or his adopted son or whatever it is they're doing now in the New 52. It won't take the world long, or certain people at least, to figure out that Bruce Wayne is Batman, right? So
it would definitely be a logical connection.
I don't know. That's crazy to me that they did this.
Well, it'll be. That's one of my big questions is, how are they going to pull off fixing that?
Yeah.
How are they going to pull off covering it up, or I've kind of heard rumors that there's pretty significant consequences on the other side of this whole thing for Dick Grayson. So, I mean, is this the end of Nightwing? Is Dan the conspiracy theorist? Is this Dan Didio finally, after X number of years, finally getting to get rid of, to kill off Nightwing like he's wanted to do for since back in the old 52?
Yeah.
So,
and I actually did mention that in a recent episode. I think it was the previews episode that I put out a few weeks ago. Yeah. I said the very same thing, Travis. Yeah, exactly. It's just what. Okay, so set aside Dick Grayson for a minute, but just the effect on Batman himself is just I'm like you said, how are they going to fix this? It's that's very exciting to me.
Yeah. Well,
unless they just totally drop it as a non thing. Which
there's no way they can do that.
I would hope they wouldn't, but I've seen that before, where it's this big reveal about something, and you think, oh my god, and then the next issue is like, oh that, whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm curious. I'm very curious. I'm suspicious. I'm very curious as to how they're gonna, how they'll fix that.
Yeah.
How they're gonna. Yeah, it'll be, because I still see how there's going to be, because it affects beyond Batman even, because that's just like a giant chain of events. Mm-hmm. If you expose one person, then it exposes a large group of people, really.
Yeah, that huge Bat family that we have hanging around Gotham and other places. Yeah. I mean, we see a little bit of that in the issue where Tim is reacting to it.
Right.
Catwoman.
Where he says, it's only a matter of time.
Yeah. Yeah, there's Batgirl, there's Catwoman is with Batman. So that's the other thing we find out during this is that Batman's still alive while because they said that the Justice League is dead, but Batman's still alive, and he's taken Cyborg to his father to save him, and then they show the reveal of Dick Grayson on TV, and I think Catwoman's the one that's like who is that, or somebody there says who is that, and Bruce responds he's a friend, and that's it.
Yeah.
So this has got to be that's okay. That's one thing I want to say too is, this is all this kind of plot based stuff is really exciting, but to me the story revolves around character and development and reaction and whatnot. So Batman, I want to see how this is affecting Batman. Specifically this reveal that Dick Grayson to the world. All we see in that panel when he says he's a friend is his eyes. It's a real close up of his eyes, and there's no emotion there. I mean, he's very and granted he's being Batman, sure,
right,
and he's with people that do not know who he is and all that. But you got to figure this has got to be tearing him up, that he can't help Dick in the situation.
We assume that because we assume that Bruce has human emotions and whatnot, but we're not seeing that anywhere. Do you think we're going to see that anywhere?
Well, I'm hoping that we do, but I'm afraid that we will not. So I don't. But we might be premature about that, Travis.
I guess. So you're telling me that the last 4 issues are going to concentrate on Batman, then, huh? Because so far the way the book has been written, it hasn't been written that way.
Right.
We're technically halfway, about halfway through the series, and it hasn't been written that way. It's been written as plot points and events. It's been written as here's a moment, here's a moment, here's a moment, but not for us to see any of that, more finer character work going on.
Mm-hmm. I assume that they will address it in some way during the series, but it probably won't be to the depth that I would like to see it.
So is that where you would use a tie-in book to be effective?
I think so, but we're not going to get that, are we?
Oh, no, we're not.
I mean, because when does 0 Year end?
28.
And we're at what?
28.
20. We're at 25.
Yeah.
So 3 more months. That puts us near the end of Forever Evil.
0 Year. Yeah, 0 Year ends basically the same time that does. We won't. There's no tie-in that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
And what the Nightwing tie-in doesn't happen until like what at the very end of Forever Evil. Then that's when like in March or something like that. Isn't that when the Nightwing book actually ties into Forever Evil?
Well,
I don't get
it's
the Nightwing
suggested,
book, but the people I do know that do get it say that they've been kind of waiting for it to affect the book, and it's going through its own thing, and it's has nothing to do with the Forever Evil stuff. The the timelines aren't matching up at this point. So.
That's true, because I still read that title, and yeah, I think the solicitation for the March episode or issue is the one where it says something about the events of Forever Evil changes the life of Dick Grayson forever or something like that. But yeah,
whatever that means.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there is the rumor. Well, we'll come back to that. Let's move on. Unless you have something else to say about issue 1. Let's move on to issue 2. So Lex Luthor steps up to save the world, which is that's Lex Luthor's shtick. He's always wanted to save the world. He doesn't want Superman to do it. He wants to do it.
He wants to be the hero. Right?
Yeah. So, but it's interesting, isn't it? So I mean, his goal is to do that. But how is he going to accomplish that? Well, he's making a clone of Superman. So here we get the New 52 Bizarro, and but it's 5 years too soon, he says. So Bizarro hasn't finished cooking, as it were.
Right. I like Bizarro.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I mean, I like the old Bizarro, but I like this Bizarro too. I mean, I do.
He's portrayed very much as Frankenstein's monster in that old movie, the original movie, where he's this big hulking brute, but he doesn't act that way until provoked.
Right.
And so Luthor tries, has him under his thrall to a certain degree, but he's not exactly, he doesn't exactly do Luthor's bidding until he's provoked in some way, as we saw in the issue and in the next issue. But yeah, it's really interesting, and I like the idea. So Forever Evil has the people from Earth 3, the crime syndicate. So that's the evil part of the series. But you also have the quote unquote evil people of the New 52 Earth, like Lex Luthor, but he's going off to save the world from the crime syndicate. So I like that pairing of evilness, if you will, in the story, as opposed to the heroes being the focus of the opposition. So it's going to be so at the end of, I think it's issue 3, you've got Luthor, Bizarro, Black Manta, Captain Cold. Is that it? Is there one more? I'm forgetting now. I think that's
Adam's in there too.
Black Adam. That's right, because Black Manta's pulling Black Adam from the ocean. So you got that small group of villains who are going to go off and like I keep saying this, but save the world, ostensibly anyway. And then the other point I just wanted to bring up, this is where we find out that Batman's still alive, is issue 2, and that he brings Cyborg to his father. It's really interesting. I find this interesting anyway. The Batman, even in Trinity War, when Grid basically pulled himself out of Cyborg, Batman was very protective of Cyborg and left with him. So obviously either Batman is very sentimental about his teammate, or he thinks that Cyborg is the key to solving this problem.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
I think it. Of course, I view Batman as most of the time being very cold and calculated when it comes to that kind of stuff. But I view. I mean, before Cyborg was pulled completely apart, you have to kind of look at him as being one of the most powerful people in the DC universe, right? As far as the information that he can gather, he pretty much knows who everybody is, and I think that Bruce knows that he knows all that stuff, and so you don't want that guy falling into the wrong hands, right? And that's how I see it anyway, is you want to take Cyborg with you because you don't want him falling into enemy hands.
Yeah, but even in Trinity War, as soon as Grid came out of him, most people were just, I think, dismissive of Victor.
Yeah.
Because Grid has all that information now. he's taken it from Victor.
That's true.
So I'm not quite sure. Maybe Batman thinks that there is. Maybe he thinks there's some connection still between Cyborg and Grid, or that Cyborg with his own knowledge can, turn the tables on Grid and affect some change there.
That and obviously a Cyborg needs more help than anybody else does.
Well, that's true.
I mean, everybody else has still got their limbs and whatnot. So, I mean, obviously he's the person that needs to be saved.
Yeah, and speaking of, how can he be alive after that? I mean, the images that we saw of Batman putting him on the table in Victor's father's
he's missing
lab.
most of his lower torso. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, the guy should be dead.
Yeah.
But
it's the wonder of comic books.
Yeah. Okay, so anything else from that issue, Travis?
Is that... I don't have the books in front of me. Is that the issue that has Grid talking about what's going on in different places in the world and places and where it is that talking about that Ultraman needs to go to Kandahar to take care of Black Adam? Was that in issue 2, or is that in the Justice League books? The only thing about this whole thing that really excited me was, and I can't remember if it was in the Forever Evil main title or the tie-ins, they name drop Doom Patrol, and I'm a huge Doom Patrol fan, so I was pretty excited by that. I noticed that throughout the books they've been name dropping a lot of names. You got the beginning of the whole Forever Evil stuff. You have Cord Industries. Ted Kord's name gets dropped. Of course, that's a Blue Beetle that everybody likes and whatnot. I find it interesting. It seems to me like they're using the Forever Evil event to name drop all these people back into the DC universe.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been quite a few of them, but the one that excited me the most was them talking about Doom Patrol.
But we haven't actually seen them on screen, as it were, right?
There actually is one panel that shows a fuzzy monitor screenshot, and it shows the second volume Doom Patrol on it, which I thought was really interesting because they have to be like the least popular Doom Patrol of all the Doom Patrols. And when I say second volume, that would be Elemental Woman and Isa and some of them. The second volume of Doom Patrol, after about 20 some issues, became Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol. Then he of course changed them further into the Doom Patrol that most people know and are familiar with as far as being famous Doom Patrol runs. But they're wearing the red and black costumes, the really high collars and stuff. I thought that was interesting that would be the Doom Patrol that they would choose to show on picture, as opposed to the most current runs or the original runs that had like Rita and Robot Man and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That second run of Doom Patrol, they created brand new characters to be the Doom Patrol as a whole, and so.
Well, hopefully we'll get Doom Patrol out of a series out of this, right?
I'm hoping so. See, then I'll tell everybody that Forever Evil was awesome just because of that.
Okay. Okay, so let's move on to number 3 real quick. So Luthor goes recruiting, like I said before. Ultraman fights Black Adam because Black Adam attacks him, and
right.
Because Ultraman is out, he's looking for more kryptonite.
Or cocaine.
Yeah. And who is it? Oh, I think it's Luthor that notices that he's avoiding the sunlight. So his flight path is taking him around the world so that he avoids being in the sun. So that's going to play I'm sure, a part in the defeat of Ultraman.
Mm-hmm.
Deathstorm is I can't. Gosh, I don't have the books open either, but I don't have it in my notes. But I can't remember if it was number 2 or issue 3 where we find out that Deathstorm kind of blasts Firestorm, and and I'm a little fuzzy on this. It seemed like that by doing that somehow Firestorm absorbed the Justice League.
Yeah, it did something to the Matrix, which is the description of what makes Firestorm. Mm-hmm. The Matrix and the combining of the two people to give Firestorm his powers and make him Firestorm. somehow it fractures that matrix and turns it into a prison. And yes, that is very poorly described, isn't it? Anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, because like the Justice League of America book, it focuses solely on the fact, really, that that's where everybody's trapped at. They're all trapped in these folds of the matrix in their own little private prisons and stuff. And nowhere does that really describe that very well. If you don't have an understanding of Firestorm and how that all works, I don't see how you as a reader know that. I mean, I talk with other people who are much newer readers to the DC universe, and they're clueless on that. I'm having to explain, okay, this is how Firestorm works and whatnot, to even give them a sense of an idea of what's really happening. To me, that seems poorly executed. I mean, cool idea, but if you don't understand those characters, I don't know how you would even begin to know that.
Well, yeah, like I said, other than that, there's that one page where Deathstorm is monologuing and he's blasting Firestorm, and he's chastising Firestorm too. Why would you share? Because he's talking about how Firestorm is a fusion between the two people, and he said, why would you ever share that? But then as Firestorm is being blasted, you see the faces of the Justice League kind of behind him, and I just took the inference there, and of course, like you said, the Justice League of America issue, where we're seeing those members of the Justice League having to deal with this prison, but we haven't seen anything regarding the big guns from the Justice League. They're off camera, except for Batman, of course.
Wonder Woman's there, unless you don't consider Wonder Woman a big gun of the Justice League, and then that's a whole other subject we can talk about, but. Because she's in the prison. She's in the prison right off the bat. She's one of the first people you see in those Justice League of America issues.
Okay, you're right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah, they just picked and choose who they wanted to tell little personal trap stories with. But
yeah. Okay. So, and also Deathstorm rearranges Captain Cold's DNA. So he goes off to chastise other villains in the DCU. Because the Rogues were supposed to raise Central City, and they didn't do it. So Deathstorm goes off to take care of that. Anyway, they start fighting, but like you said earlier, so Deathstorm kind of blasts Captain Cold, and it looks like they're returning perhaps Captain Cold to his pre-New 52 abilities, where he uses a cold gun. Yeah. Perhaps that's where I'm thinking it's going. But I find it really interesting that they started Captain Cold the way they did, and I know a lot of people, like our friend Lee, didn't like what they did with him by internalizing his cold powers. But here they are apparently reversing that.
Yep.
After a couple years in the DCU, the New 52 version. So I find that really interesting that they're setting it up this way. And what's next? What else are they gonna quote unquote fix?
Retcon.
Yeah, retcon already.
Yeah.
And then you also find out that Bizarro has flame breath instead of heat vision, which I just thought that was cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
If Superman can have freezing breath, which is the stupidest power he has, that makes no sense whatsoever. Anyway.
Superman, come on.
The guy is a solar battery. How can his breath be cold? That makes no sense.
But he's Kryptonian.
Whatever. All right. And then the last thing, unless you have anything else to add about that issue, Travis?
No.
The last thing I want to talk about. Okay, so you mentioned Justice League of America. I've mentioned how I'm reading the Justice League books. But it's really Justice League number 25 that I want to talk about. But before I do that, just I want to touch briefly. So we talked about Justice League of America, where those issues seem to be dealing with the prison, and we're getting a lot of focus on Stargirl and the Martian Manhunter, which is completely fine with me. Justice League Dark, though, I have to say I could care less about that storyline. What about you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And to pile onto that, I could, ever since they brought in Constantine to be the Ursat's leader of the group, I don't know. I'm not.
I don't mind.
I'm not.
I don't mind that. I don't mind that, but I don't. Yeah, there's a lot about that book that I'm not really excited about right now. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm hanging on through the event, the whole blight thing. Yeah, I don't know that I'm interested in that. They seem to be changing the makeup of that team, and that doesn't excite me a whole lot either. So.
Well, I don't mind, changing up the makeup, although I don't think that the members that started out in the book got a fair shake, because I really liked a lot of the people that were in that book.
Yeah, I did too. Well, but like them putting, it seems like they're going to fold Phantom Stranger into it, and they're going to fold Swamp Thing in it. Those people have their own books. Give people who don't have their own books a chance to.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So enough complaining about that. So Justice League number 25. So this, to me, Travis, this is the best story of the whole Forever Evil out of everything I've read.
And it's not but it's not in Forever Evil. That's the problem. It's the problem I have anyway.
Oh, you mean the story is not part of the Forever Evil title?
Right.
Yeah. Why wasn't it?
I don't know.
Make it an 8-issue series and put this in as issue number 4. It was really bizarre, but very good. So this is, I just want to point this out. This is by Geoff Johns, so he's still writing this. This story. Doug Mahnke is doing the pencils, and you have some other folks here. Wow, 1, 2, 3, 4 inkers on this one issue.
Yeah, somebody's not making their timelines. That's what I'm thinking.
And then Travis, 3 colorists.
Yeah, that's because somebody's behind.
Wow. Anyway, I just want to point out it was Geoff Johns doing the writing because he's also writing the main book. But this story, Owlman's origin, was the best of the bunch.
It was. We also get the origin of another new character in this book.
And that would be?
Plastic Man.
Plastic Man, yeah. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. And I loved the little bit of it what they did. I love the scene of him stretching the rubber band at the beginning of his part. I know most people don't care. Plastic Man is a joke for most people, but I don't know. I just thought it was cool. I thought it was cool. Another way for them to work another old DC character back into the DC universe, and I thought it was kind of smartly done. But
yeah, this exactly the way that they're bringing in some characters into the New 52. This is one of the better ways that they've done it. Other characters, they just kind of plopped in there, and yeah, they're recognizable. They're a little different, but they're just kind of there. But this seems it's tied into something. It seems a little bit more organic in the way it's presented to us. Because E.L. O'Brien is, if people don't know, Plastic Man, his origins, he was a crook before he became a hero.
Right.
And so this makes total sense. His involvement in this situation and eventually what happens to him. It is, I do want to point out though, it's really funny how, again, the parallels here, Travis, between the old Joker origin. I don't know how the Joker is anymore. I don't know how any of these characters are anymore. So,
right.
But he fell into a vat of chemicals, and that's what helped turn him into the Joker, right?
Right.
And so you get Plastic Man here, immersed in these chemicals that Owlman basically has caused to spill everywhere, right?
Right.
Well, I guess it's not necessarily Owlman, but Owlman's there to take care of these crooks and take over. But it's because of his actions that E.L. O'Brien gets bathed in these chemicals, and he melts into plastic.
And another thing that's interesting about this story, I really liked the story. It was really interesting to see his history and where his is different than Bruce's, and all of that was really cool. And even the whole proposal at the end, for Nightwing, to come and be his ward, his second. That's really cool. But Nightwing isn't part of the Justice League, is he?
No.
But it all happened in the Justice League book.
Yes. Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it?
It's just. I'm just pointing it out. It just seems interesting that that's where they chose to tell the story at was there. It's like, I don't know.
Well, Owlman is the Batman of Earth 3, so.
Yeah, I guess.
And the fact that Owlman is Batman's brother in the other universe, and I understand what you're saying.
By far the best book of the of the whole event and crossover, in my opinion.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
By far.
in a tie-in issue. It's just it's so bizarre to me that they did it this way. And like I said, like I keep saying, by the same writer.
Writer, right.
But this is where Johns excels, is where he does these little character spotlights, and we're not getting that. And and I understand, the Forever Evil book has to be
bigger.
It's got a bigger scope. There's a lot of characters involved. You could only do so much in 7 issues. And of course, if they announced it as a year-long thing, I'm sure a lot of fans would have went, what? Why does it have to be so long? Anyway, so I get it, but it's really funny that the Justice League tie-in book is the best one of the bunch. And like I said, the ramifications of the proposal that Owlman has to Nightwing, that to join him and help prevent Ultraman from taking over, and to help him help Owlman be the one who takes over, that. Just the look on Dick's face as he considers this, just very briefly, and just calmly says yes, he will help. Of course, Dick will continue, I'm sure, to work as best he can within the confines that he has to bring Owlman down.
Yeah.
But what does that mean for Nightwing? And there are rumors that perhaps someone else is coming in to take on the Nightwing persona in his own book, perhaps. I've heard what's her name? Gosh, I can't remember her name now.
Rowe.
Harper Rowe may be one of them. I've heard someone even suggest that it might be Stephanie Brown, but I highly doubt that.
No.
But that was a really good issue. The whole idea of family, that opposite mirror thing between Bruce and Dick and Thomas Wayne and Dick Grayson and the Alfreds, and I loved it. It was great. I wish we got more stories like this for this event.
Agreed.
Okay. Anyway, I was very excited. You know me, I'm a big Dick Grayson fan, so I'm excited and also a little nervous about what they're going to do with him in the next year or so, with what comes out of this book. So, all right. Anything else we want to say about Forever Evil?
I hope the next 4 months go by quickly. And unless something miraculous happens in the next issues to end this thing out with, I will definitely be back on track with. I don't need to. I really don't need to read event books, and I hope they don't continue to go on with them. So. Yeah.
Well, I don't think you're ever going to get your wish there, Travis.
Oh, I know. Well, I guess I could be happy the fact that DC it took 2 years to do it. So.
Yeah, they don't do one a quarter. At least they're. Yeah. One a year I can handle. I think that's good, but. 1 a quarter, I don't know. Okay, so we'll probably come back to Forever Evil after it's ended, just to discuss how it ended up and how we feel about that. But we're not going to do. Actually, we talked more about the issues individually than I anticipated, but we'll see how it goes. But we're going to move on to 3 issues of another comic. Would you say a better comic?
I like it more. I think it's more interesting.
Yeah. And I'm talking, of course, about Jupiter's Legacy. This is by Mark Millar and Frank Quitely. Those are the big names on the covers. Along with Peter Daugherty, who's doing colors, letters, and design. And this is, and on the back it says, the writer of Kick-Ass and the artist of All-Star Superman join forces to create the greatest superhero epic of this generation. Dun, dun, dun! So what do you have to say about that exclamation, Travis?
3 issues in, they haven't done that.
Yeah. Mark Millar is certainly one for hyperbole and self-promotion, for sure.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I'm really enjoying this. Mark Millar's stuff, to me, is really hit and miss, and usually miss. Mm-hmm. But I'm really enjoying this, and of course, I really like Frank Quitely's art. So anything he does is.
I was like, the whole thing was starting to come out. I was like, kind of apprehensive because of the writer, but I knew I'd be okay with the art. I thought I was probably potentially going to like the story idea from what I could gather from the pitch of it. So that's why I decided to get it. And it's every other month is when it comes out. That's its release date. Right? So,
yeah. What do you think about that? How, having a bi-monthly book like this, telling the story the way it's being told. Because I remember when issue 3 came out, you and I were both like, "Holy crap!" Because it really ramped up the storyline and where the book is going to focus and where that focus is going to go. And so it's like, wow. And so it's been approximately, I'll say 6 months, because every other month, it's every 2 months we get an issue. So I guess what I'm trying to ask you is, how do you feel about getting a book bi-monthly? And do you think we should have more comics like that?
It's hard. It's hard. And this is, me wanting it both ways. I want the creators to have the time to make the best work they can. And I know that sometimes, deadlines approach, and so they're rushing to get stuff done. And that's when you get the comics where you got the 6 inkers and 10 colorists to finish a book up, and it looks a little inconsistent. So given the time to create that, having the time to create it is great. But from a reader standpoint, it's also sometimes hard because you want that next story kind of now. And with a month break in between, I haven't had to yet, but I almost feel like I need to go back and read the issues before it to refresh myself on what's next. And this last issue, issue 3, the way it ended, it ends kind of with a, oh my gosh, what's going to happen now? And I've got a lot of energy, and I don't know that my brain will still have that energy by the time I pick up that next book, unless the book is done well enough that when I open that first page, it immediately captures that energy again, and then I'll be fine with it. Do you see? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, so if it's written well enough that for me to pick up the next issue, and it just can immediately kick my brain into that energy that I felt going out of the last issue, I'm going to be fine with it. If it hits a dry spell of trying to more inform us or whatever kind of thing, like some books tend to do sometimes, then that long break in between will kill the book for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like most books will have that in it somewhere in its story. It will have these moments that are more informational as opposed to feeling like I'm experiencing something, and that could be bad.
But wouldn't you say that you have felt that excitement over the second and third issue?
Yes, so far it's been. I'm saying it's been great so far. It's worked out well.
Mm-hmm. Despite the fact that it's bi-monthly.
You're asking me about this whole it being bi-monthly thing. How's that work, and would I want more books that way? And I guess I'm saying I would be fine with more books that way if I was getting quality work, and those were some of the pitfalls that would need to not happen for me to enjoy a book like that.
But so far, you're getting that from Jupiter's Legacy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
See, I agree with you totally. I think I actually would like to see more bi-monthly books if the creators need that time to produce something really cool. And so far, I think that Millar and Quietly are succeeding.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we're only 3 issues in.
Right.
But it's so far what they've done, what they've accomplished, I think, is a very entertaining read. Mm-hmm. It's slightly different from other, I want to say, Justice League, maybe even Avengers type ripoff stories, this is what this is, because, and we should probably back up and explain what Jupiter's Legacy is in just a second, in case people don't know.
Right.
So it's an interesting take on the superhero genre, an interesting take on the Superman icon, and other characters like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, so far. Okay, so let's back up and explain what Jupiter's Legacy is. Do you want to just briefly give a synopsis of what this comic is about?
So Jupiter's Legacy basically is in the 40s, I believe. A group of superheroes came into fruition. They went someplace and got power. We don't even know exactly where that place was.
The island. They refer to the island a lot.
The island, right? But what that is, we don't know. But they come back from that with superpowers, basically the kind of the equivalent of the Justice League or Justice League or Avengers for lack of anything better. And they basically came along with the whole, the American way. That whole thing's all in one nice, neat, wholesome package. And that was the older generation of heroes. And our main story takes place with, this is the second generation has been born. They're all superpowered too. And the world as a whole is in financial crisis that our real world has gone through here recently. And that's kind of the setting. And the setting is basically, what do these kids do with their parents are still around being these, great idealistic heroes, and where is their place in that? They either can't live up to their parents' ideals, or because they're a different generation, they don't have the same ideals. And what does that, what potentially the conflicts that are there is where I see the story being at. Yeah.
And I will add too, I think Millar is doing the whole, what if Superman really existed in our world type examination, because you have the Superman-like character who is what's his name, Utopian.
Yeah.
And so he's the guy that he's very much truth, justice, in the American way. Let the system work things out. Don't as superpowered, highly intelligent people, we can't interfere with the workings of
the common man.
Exactly.
And the governments and all that stuff.
Right. But he has
influence.
Utopian has a brother whose name is Walter, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't think did they tell us his superhero name?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I think Utopian,
everybody just refers to him as Walter or Uncle Walter.
Yeah, so. Uncle. Yeah, exactly. I think Utopian maybe is the only one that is identified as having a superhero name.
No, Mom has a name too. Utopian's wife. I can't remember what it is, but she has she has an actual superpower, superhero name also.
So, but Walter definitely does not agree with his brother, and he has his own ideas about how things should run. And he starts during the course of these 3 issues. Well, it's mostly the first 2 issues. He will publicly disagree with his brother and tries to provoke his brother into looking at things differently. Of course, Utopian wants nothing to do with that, and basically, Utopian's kind of a jerk. He basically says, "Do it my way," and without any regard to anybody else's viewpoint. He's very much an authoritarian taskmaster to some degree. Although, but it's weird because he also expects people. He expects people to live up to these ideals that he has, but he's also willing to let them do their own thing, even if he thinks it's wrong, to a certain degree. So it's a weird dichotomy in this guy. But when he's pressed, he'll basically snipe back. Just do it my way. Of course, Walter wants nothing to do with that. And then he will. In the 3rd issue, we see things change dramatically.
Holy cows! Yeah.
But let
the status quo dramatically changes.
Yeah, yes. In the 3rd issue. Wow. Okay. So there's those 2. You have, like I said, you mentioned the mother. You have in the 1st issue, especially, you see the son and the daughter of Utopian, and they're kind of feckless youth. They don't have the focus or the drive that their parents do.
They're partying. They're using drugs.
Yeah. As young people will often do, they're kind of rebelling to a certain degree against their parents. And the 1st issue ends up with the daughter, whose name Chloe. Chloe basically takes some extraterrestrial cocaine or something, and then passes out.
Yeah.
And then you find out in the next issue that she is pregnant.
Yep.
And not only is she pregnant, but she is pregnant by the son of one of the world's
most notorious supervillains.
Yeah, notorious supervillain. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oops.
Yeah.
And his name is Hutch, but he actually turns out to be a pretty decent guy from what we've been shown.
Yeah.
He actually even goes, I think this is in the third issue, but he actually goes to Utopian to talk to him about this relationship, and then Utopian ends up there's a fake emergency that draws him out, and that's what happened. The series changing events in issue 3. We'll get to that in a second. We are also shown that Walter has these mind powers where he's able to get into someone's mind and recreate. Basically, it's like a virtual world in their mind. So they're in the first issue, they're fighting this supervillain, and while they're beating the crap out of this guy in reality, the villain is in this shoreline, this seaside that Walter would visit as a child, and he's spent I can't remember how long he said, but he spent months or maybe even years perfecting the details of this illusion that he's created. And then he also does something very similar in the third issue with Chloe's mother.
Right.
Travis, that bit right there was really disturbing to me for some reason.
The attack on the mom?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to me, it was amazing on a lot of levels as a long-term comic book reader. I mean, yes, extremely disturbing, just what he allowed her to see and what he allowed her to think was happening versus what was actually happening to her was pretty crazy. But the other thing I really loved about it is, we read most of our superhero books, and anytime there's a super powered fight, there's always these big wind up and swings, and the person gets hit and you see him fly back into stuff. And, it all feels like it's in slow motion to some degree, these big wind up superpower, punching fights and stuff. And in this comic, the attacks are so fast, and it's like the energy that was in those panels was amazing. Just how fast it's like, bang. I mean, she's walking along, they're in their house, they're in their secret identities. She's talking to her daughter, and then all of a sudden she's like smacked out of the house, into the side of a van, and it's instantaneous. It's just there's no wind up to any of that stuff that was happening. It's just bang, 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 bang. It just felt extremely fast in comparison to most superhero comics that I read when there's a superhero battle. It always seems lumbering, and there was nothing about this that was lumbering. It was just so instantaneous. And yeah, mom being killed was so incredibly brutal. And mean. It wasn't like they just beat her. They wanted to let her know just how bad they beat her before they beat her.
Yeah, exactly. And to add to that, Walter, who puts a bug in Utopian's son's ear, I think his name Brandon is his name.
Yeah, Brandon.
So to kind of like I said, put a bug in his ear to overthrow his father, right? And so Walter, of course, is orchestrating this whole thing, this whole takeover, and it amazed me too. So there's the brutality of the attack on the mother. What also is amazing is how many superpowered people are involved in this that signed on. And apparently so quickly and so much into it. I mean, they're all in. There's the panel in issue 3 where the mother comes running outside or towards. Actually, it's kind of confusing because she gets, like you said, she gets thrown out of her house into a van. Oh no, that's Chloe. Oh, I see. I misread that. So in the panel, you see the mother gets smashed into the wall in the house, but Chloe's the one that gets thrown out into the van.
Oh, okay.
And then the mother comes running out to save her or to help her. And then you see all these people surrounding the mother. And there's the one character, the lady with the ponytail, the blonde ponytail, and she's wearing red armor, almost. Well, sort of. I mean, she's basically not wearing much.
Right.
Which interesting design choice. But anyway, she says, "Worry about yourself, bitch." And it's just that contempt. And so I'm wondering how much are we missing here that's just hinted at? Over the years, how much is Utopian and his wife built up this resentment. Yeah. Built up this resentment in all these people for so long that it finally, once Walter adds a little bit of fuel to the flame. They're just like, oh my God, yes, and I'm all in. I'm gonna do this, and they're so mean about it. I guess
Well, they are.
It's so weird to see that in a quote unquote superhero comic.
Yeah. That's to some degree that was the edge I was hoping the book would have. I mean, this is the part of the book it's giving us that other books haven't given us. As he's like, this is the groundbreaking whatever. I don't think the book is that, but it is leveling something that other books where they kind of want to deconstruct or make superheroes more like us or whatever. This feels like a different approach as far as that stuff goes, because it's the same approach. I mean, the same thing happens when they do in Utopia too. They let him know. They let him know before they get rid of him exactly, where he stands and doesn't stand. And that's, to me, that was pretty dramatic too. As he's trying to call in all this help and I mean, everybody's showing up, but they're showing up to crush him,
to
not
take
to
him
help
down.
him.
Yeah. And how callous his own son is to him, because it's Brandon who deals the killing blow.
Sure, because he's the one that's got the power to actually be able to do it.
Yeah. It's just, to commit patricide is just, how screwed up did the Utopian make his children, or at least Brandon?
Yeah.
Because Chloe so far is, I think she's just, she's just the fun-loving, superpowered daughter, and who ends up being saved by Hutch before Uncle Walter has a chance to kill her too.
And they're trying to kill her. They're trying to kill
her. Oh yeah,
her.
they're chasing him.
Because they're popping all over the place. And that was a great scene too. Because Hutch has this ability, or with this rod or whatever, he can teleport very quickly between place to place. Mm-hmm. So he's teleporting with Chloe, and they're, because they got all these kind of super powered, super fast people, they're able to keep catching up to him for a while. And so that's a very exciting scene too, as they're, popping into the middle of the interstate and popping over to, different places and stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of the interstate, they pop in there, and Chloe, because she's super powerful, a car smashes into her, and the guy, you see the guy flying out through the windshield. And
right.
I shouldn't be laughing about this, but it was funny because she turns back to him, and as the guy is crumpled on the road as cars are driving by, and she says, "Is he okay?" And Hutch is, "He's fine. Come on, they're still coming."
Right. Well, because I mean, I don't think that Chloe is dumb, but she's kind of she's simple as far as this whole thing goes. I mean, I get the impression she doesn't even use her superpowers. She uses her whole thing is she uses her notoriety as being the daughter of these two, because she doesn't have a secret identity. She uses her notoriety of being the daughter of these two superheroes to get endorsements. I mean, that's all she does does endorsements and charity shoots and stuff. That's how she makes a living. She's not actually a superhero herself. So it's kind of interesting.
And Brandon does the same thing to a certain degree. He uses his notoriety as the son of Utopian, but he's definitely got a screw loose or something.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, and then the whole thing ends, with him, major spoiler, obviously, finishing off his father. And then he turns to his uncle and goes, "Yeah, I don't know. What's next?"
Yeah.
He doesn't even really have ultimately, he doesn't really have a plan. I thought maybe he would actually think he was in charge and whatnot, but he obviously, yeah.
Yeah,
which is frightening, because you know what? Walter and his powers are the most scariest thing ever, I think. Especially after watching it get used in this issue number 3. I'm just like, oh my God, this guy is beyond frightening. That he can just make you think whatever you want while people are actually executing you or whatever. I mean, it's just,
And so why is he this way? That's the big question for me right now, is why is Walter, quote unquote evil?
Is it the Shakespearean thing, the brother versus the brother kind of stuff where, my older brother's never let me do anything, and he's wrong, I'm right, and I'm finally going to prove that I'm right? Because Walter has this whole plan for the entire world. I mean, if we all go to this new economic system that he's got in place, the world, in his view, should actually become a more utopian kind of place.
Mm-hmm.
But you also get the impression that these guys are going to be in charge of everything. They're not going to simply just let people do anything. Because, I mean, some of the stuff that he has this whole manifesto, and part of that manifesto is things like not allowing anybody to have religion because religion causes conflict, so no one's going to have religion anymore. How are they going to enforce all that?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to just be bonkers.
He certainly has the superpowered group to help enforce all this stuff.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. And right now, it doesn't look like there's anybody there's even anybody in the book now that would even be willing to stop it from happening.
Well, see, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think this is where we get another comparison to Forever Evil in a way, because you have Lex Luthor and Captain Cold and all those, the villains of the DCU becoming more or less the heroes of the story to some degree. I think we're going to see that as well with Jupiter's Legacy, in that Hutch ends up going on, or saving Chloe, and I'm sure Hutch's father will be involved in this, and so I'm thinking that maybe the villains of the world, what's left of them, may end up being the opposition to this revolution. I think that's the safe bet. I'm kind of hoping they don't do that, because that seems obvious to me.
Yeah, to me, I was thinking it was more like it was going to be, this is the story we're going to get. We're going to get this story of, if we were in the real world and there were real super people, superpowers, this is more likely what it would actually be like.
But don't you think, though, that, it seems like
I don't know how long that story can go.
Exactly. Where is the adversary of the story then? If Walter takes over and he has all these superpowered psychopaths at his beck and call to enforce whatever he wants, where's the antagonist of the story? Where's the conflict?
Well, the conflict may be in the fact is that people may have been sick to death of Utopia and his wife. They may have been sick to death of them and their strong arm, whatever. But do you think that whole group of those people are going to go along with everything else that's in his manifesto? At some point, I think the internal conflict alone, there's probably going to be plenty of that. You took down the most powerful dude, and now everyone's got a taste of, hey, you know what? If we don't like the person that's in charge, we can deal with them. Now I don't know. They've opened up all cans of worms as far as the whole, social psychological group dynamic thing goes. Mm-hmm. That I think they could go anywhere with the story. I just don't see any evidence whatsoever, short of Hutch and Chloe on the run, that there's any evidence whatsoever that that there's this other group of people out there that would be any sort of resistance.
Well, you're right. You're right. Absolutely. We have not been shown that, but I bet you the next issue we're going to get a little bit of that, or at least the beginnings of that. I can't see a story where a person takes over the world where there isn't some sort of resistance.
Sure.
But I think you're right. I'm sure there will be some internal conflict. I guess I'm kind of discounting that because of how much all these other people, these superpowered people who took out Utopian and his wife, and that family, or trying to take out that family, aside from Brandon, they seem to be brainwashed. Not brainwashed. That's not the right word. They seem to be fully engaged in this way of thinking. So I wonder how much internal conflict from that group there will be.
Yeah. I'm curious, and I wasn't sure that I was going to be. I was enjoying the book, but I wasn't sure just how much I was enjoying the book until it got to issue 3. And issue 3, everything just kind of exploded in a cool way.
Yeah.
That made me just go, whoa, I want to know what's going to go on now.
Yeah.
Because it just kind of really hit the crazy switch, and I'm like, man. First issue was interesting. I was like, oh, this is kind of an interesting story. It might be, see what this is, and I kind of felt like, to some degree, it was like, okay, you got the kind of the 1950s mom and dad as far as their, how they act about everything, the kind of the cleavers kind of a thing, and their kids are like kids out of the movie from Less Than Zero kind of thing, where they're kind of, on drugs, partying, hoodlums that don't really give a shit about anything. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to be that exciting to read. And then issue 2, you start getting the you get Walter, and you get his doctrine that he's that he wants to pursue, and all the stuff that with it, and that was starting to get really interesting. And then, like I said, with issue 3, it's just everything hits the fan in such a crazy and brutal way. I was like, holy cows. So yeah, I'm excited to see what happens next.
And what do you think? Because they mentioned that island. I mean, they started off with that with Sheldon, who's the Utopian, and Walter, and that all those people, the first generation of heroes, or superpower people.
They had a calling to go to that island.
Yeah, he specifically, Sheldon did. And so this island calls to him. They all go out there because they all believe in Sheldon, and they come back with superpowers. But the island keeps coming back. I think almost every issue so far. But I'm wondering that island has to come into play in the story at some point in the future. And so I'm just wondering, or not wondering. I'm interested to see what the island means, why how they got their powers, why they got the powers, and how that may play into the overall story.
Right.
Although I'm kind of a little bit island out. Considering Lost and Arrow, the island on Arrow. Not that I don't watch that show anymore. But it seems like mysterious islands seems to be a trope in fiction these days. It's just, really, do we need another island story? Anyway, and I'm really interested in the Hutch Chloe situation, and how much Hutch may play into. I'm guessing the Resistance, if nothing else, to save Chloe and himself, and their unborn child.
Child, right?
Okay, so last thing, I just wanted to just throw that out here, Travis, and see what your reaction is. So, like I said at the beginning of this discussion, this is supposed to be the greatest superhero epic of this generation, and how issue 3 really ramped up not only the violence, but the brutality, what do I want to say here? Just the overall, wow factor. Does it remind you? Does this, not necessarily specifics of the story, but does this book remind you of some other groundbreaking series about superheroes in a more realistic world?
Yeah.
And so how do you feel about the comparison between Jupiter's Legacy and Watchmen? Is there a strong one, or and I guess really what I'm trying to get at is, do we really need another story like that? And are we getting that? Maybe I'm being unfair here.
No, it's along the same vein, right? I don't see how you can't say it's not. I mean, he is deconstructing the idealism of the superhero, right? And that's kind of part of what Watchmen was about, I believe, is the deconstruction of the superhero. And he's doing that in his story also. So I think that's a fair comparison as far as that goes. Is it as good? I couldn't tell you that yet. 3 issues in. I think the writing in Watchmen's better, as far as just, I don't know.
It is Alan Moore versus Mark Millar, so.
Right. But I think it's a fair comparison. And then, do we need another? If it's going to tell me something different in some sense, sure. If it's entertaining and whatnot. I don't feel that they're exactly the same, like I'm reading the same story. So I certainly don't need somebody to literally retread the exact same ground.
And I'm not suggesting that he is, but there are a lot of similarities.
Sure there are.
That made me want to pose the question.
Sure. And I mean, it's a good question, and it'll be interesting as it goes along to compare, not literally directly, but the ideas that are addressed in both. Yes, I think there's room for that. Do I think that once Alan Moore wrote Watchmen, which I think is a wonderful book and whatnot, does nobody else never need to address that? No, I don't think that's the case. So somebody else addressing it is fine. I hope that he addresses it in some other, that he goes somewhere else with it, or asks some different questions around it. I mean, right now some of it's the same, but some of it isn't.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I like I said, I just wanted to get your take on that. I had the same thoughts. If it's going to be something at least a little different, then it's okay. But if it's just a retread of Watchmen and those particular tropes and ideas and the examination of the superhero, the deconstruction of the superhero, without being anything different, then yeah, it's just a waste of time. It's just a flash. It's just flashy, which that's what Mark Millar does. He does flashy. So
yeah.
Is this going to be more than just flashy?
Well, see, that's interesting. Now you said that, and I start really thinking about it. There are a lot of comparisons that are the same. I mean, because in the Watchmen, obviously somebody thought that they were going to create a better world, and by doing that, they need to basically ultimately end up having to eliminate powerful superheroes in the process of doing that. Well, that's what's happening in Jupiter Legacy. It's just more straightforward and less subtle and less story involved in the deconstruction of those or in the killing of those the ideal that's there.
Mm-hmm. And now that we're talking about it, in both Watchmen and this story, the reader plays a very active part in this deconstruction, because you have to know what the superhero things are. You have to know that Superman. Yeah, you have to know that Superman is the stand-up justice, truth, justice, and American way guy. You have to know that superheroes are supposed to behave a certain way, and then tie that into real world stuff, like you mentioned about the economy. It's very much Mark Millar and Frank Quitely are very much, because they're tagged as co-creators of this. So I'm not sure how much Quitely has to do with like the story beats or the points of the story, but I keep saying Mark Millar a lot, but I wanted to make sure that that Quitely may have something a large part to do with this. So putting in what's happening in our own world economically and whatnot, and throwing superheroes into it and how that affects it. I think in a way Mark Millar is doing a somewhat better job of doing that than what Alan Moore did in Watchmen. Just in the sense of it's very timely, and basically that it's just very timely, and with the specific issues that are plaguing us right now, in our own world. Now, Alan Moore had definitely a breadth and depth to the story that spanned decades in that story. So there's a lot more meat to it than what's in here. But I think Millar is definitely examining things, well, not to the depth that I'd like to see. That's the part that's missing for me so far. Right. Maybe we'll get that soon, but Millar's definitely examining the issues, the real world issues, just a little bit more, I think, than maybe Moore did in Watchmen. But like you say, we're only 3 issues in. It might be a real unfair comparison.
Sure. Well, the thing is that in the era that Watchmen was written and whatnot, it was still during the era of, the nuclear annihilation and stuff like that. So that's why you had that whole, DEFCON 4 stuff and whatnot, and the alien invasion and all that, versus the economy, which is the biggest threat in Jupiter's Legacy, right? And as far as world threats go, it's the economy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know that one's touching it more than the other is. But yeah, that's interesting. That almost takes away from Jupiter's Legacy.
I know.
The more I ponder that now, it's like, now I can see all kinds of, that'll be interesting. That'll be interesting to look at it in that view too, because I hadn't really been pondering it that hard. I mean, I knew that was there, but not really.
Well, I certainly didn't mean to detract from your enjoyment of the story.
No. But that's from a how does this all work standpoint, because I read comic books on a number of levels. One, just for the entertainment of what's simply there on the page, and then, beyond that, what am I being told, and that sort of thing. And then that's interesting. It's, like I said, I'm really, really, really curious and to see where the book is going to go forward from here. Is it going to Is it gonna? Because I can see it going two directions. I can see it being really simple, or I can see it being even more complicated. I'm hoping they take the more complicated route.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of questions that could come out of all of this, and they could just dumb it down to, some real base things, and that'll be unfortunate if that's what happens.
And see, and that's my usual criticism of Millar's work.
Yeah.
Because he has these really cool ideas, but you get to the end, the execution of the end, and it's just everything just falls flat.
Yep.
So I'm hoping we don't get that.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So that's Jupiter's Legacy. Let's move on to another Image book, Revival, which has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
We're up to, I think, 16 issues, although I haven't read number 16 yet. So this is a rural, I hate this word, rural, I have to really enunciate that, a rural noir.
Yeah.
Say that 5 times fast. By Tim Seeley and Mike Norton.
Uh-huh.
And so the premise of this is that a bunch of dead people came back to life. And what that means in this little, it's Wisconsin, isn't it?
Yeah, Wasilla, Wisconsin. Which is a real place.
Is it Wasilla?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty sure it's Wasilla.
Okay. Anyway, it's in Wisconsin. It says rural central Wisconsin. I don't know. I'm sure you're right. I'm sure they named it. The focus of the story is mostly on Officer Dana Cypress, who is a police officer, or works for the sheriff's department.
Yes.
And the department is run by her father. I believe his name is Wayne. Mm-hmm. Her sister M is also involved because we talked about spoilers before. Here's a big one. You find out at the end of the first, or near the end of the first issue, and that's really was, like the third issue of Jupiter's Legacy. The ending of that first issue of Revival was, holy cow! What am I reading here? You find out M is one of the revivers because she gets ran through with a scythe, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it was? Yeah, by a crazy reviver. And
revivers for everybody, that's what they call the people who have come back to life.
Exactly.
On this day. And it's a specific day. The people who all came back to life on a specific day.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think it was a day in January, if I remember, because the latest storyline has Dana investigating how M died, who killed her, because she was killed. She was murdered.
Yeah.
And so that's the latest storyline. In the meantime, you've got this whole town. They're under quarantine. People are freaking out. The greater implications of what this means. Because we haven't got too much of this in the story, I don't think. What does this mean to the world at large? That people in this area came back to life after being dead. Mm-hmm. So you got the religious aspects of it. You got the societal reaction to such news, and you've got this little hamlet of a Wisconsin town dealing with this, and specific, and all the little details that are coming out over the course of these 16 now issues, and I really have to give props to Seeley and Norton for the way that they're unfolding the story, whereas Jupiter's Legacy was kind of like. Here's a lot of crap, I'm going to throw it at you type thing.
In your face.
Definitely in your face.
And this is not.
This is very much more subtle, much more slow, but in the sense of, like a simmering story is developing here. So it's not like, it's not a boring read by any means. And there's actual characters. There's characterization, there's development of characters here, which I really appreciate. But the cast of characters, Travis, there's so many people here. I mentioned Dana, her sister, the father. You've got Cooper, who is Dana's son. You've got the CDC. Ex-husband. The ex-husband, that's right. You got the CDC guy, Ibrahim Ramin, who
is Muslim.
Right, and so that causes some issues in
his own right.
And with some small-minded people in the story. Did I say Cooper? Cooper's the son. Oh, I want to mention too. Ibrahim and Dana have this sort of interesting relationship.
Yeah.
Because they slept together, but then they have to work together, and it's really weird.
Yeah.
And
it's
you have
awesome.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I love about this whole this huge cast of characters, this whole thing. I mean, I know early on there were some people who were reading it that I talked to who were kind of complaining about the fact that there's basically a lot of questions and nothing ever gets answered, kind of a thing. And things get answered, but they slowly and over time, and not in necessarily a perfect chronological order as far as, here's point A, here's point B. The story is told in a wonderful way to me that feels like life, because at least in my life, I don't just simply, okay, today I know is the day I have to go to work, and I simply go to work and I simply come home and nothing else in my life or happens around. There's all these other little complicated things that are part of life that happen. And this book does a really great job of showing all those other, things that are in motion all the time. It's not like only one thing's in motion. We're only telling this part of the story, and that's the only thing that's motion. They're always showing other stuff in the background that's in motion while you may be, they may be concentrating on one character, but there's all this other stuff that's in motion. It's just, I think is, great storytelling.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It reminds me a lot of like TV series, right? Where you have a long running TV series that you get backstories to the characters. You may even have like these long running arcs that individual episodes will feed into those arcs, and then you get a payoff at the end to some degree. But you don't get the big reveals, every month, every episode. You know, it doesn't happen that way. It's slow. Like I said, it's simmering. It's slowly unfolding. This really interesting story with these complex and convoluted ideas and character reactions and all this stuff. And, speaking of TV series, it reminds me of or TV series and some of the people that you mentioned just a minute ago, and the reaction to this. It reminds me of the reaction to the TV series Lost. And I mentioned that before with the island in regards to Jupiter's Legacy, but a lot of the negative reaction to Lost was it seemed like we weren't getting the answers.
Yeah, for me it's Twin Peaks is what it is for me, which of course dates me even more, but that's because it's the same sort of that kind of thing. You get all this stuff going on, But the point of those particular TV series and maybe not so much this comic, but we'll see because we haven't hasn't ended. To me, it's not about the answers; it's about the questions. Right.
How did this happen? Why? I mean, we obviously, if you ask a question, you want an answer. I'm more interested in not the answers, but how people react to what's going on.
Right. The exploration of it.
The exploration of it, exactly. The examination of it. So I'm more than happy to keep reading this and to see where it goes. One thing I did mention, you also have these, I'll call them ghosts that are running around.
Right.
So that plays an integral part of the story too. I say ghosts, but they're these
aliens or something.
Exactly. They look really alien.
Yeah.
They got these really long limbs. Their heads are kind of elongated, but that could just be, let's assume that they are ghosts or spirits. That's probably a better word to put it, spirits, because at one point in the story, is it Dana or M? I think it's M, who sees one of those spirits go into a reviver and they burn up.
Yeah.
And so in a more recent story, M she thinks she's saving this little girl whose name is Jordan, from having one of those. Oh my God, that girl's crazy, creepy, crazy. But she saves, as like I said, she thinks she's saving this little girl Jordan from one of those spirits. She doesn't want Jordan to burn up. Jordan
wants to embrace that.
Well, she died. She feels like she should be dead. And that joining with that spirit will accomplish that. And she also says, basically, because certain people can hear these spirits talking to them. Now we do see them speaking in this really slurred, slow form of speech, but there's also this other speaking that they're doing to the revivers, and Jordan also tells M, adults don't listen. They only hear what they want to hear. And so that implies, of course, that there's some truth that we're not seeing yet, that we're not being exposed to,
right,
involving these spirits and the revivers and what all that means. So I'm really curious what that means. And of course, like I said, she's creepy. Not only does she want to die again, once M saves her from this creature, she goes back to, M takes her back home, and she ends up, God, gruesome stuff. She peels off her eyelids.
Yeah, with a razor.
Oh, that was just...
Well, see, here's the thing is that if you haven't read this book, you don't know, is that revivers are kind of indestructible in that they grow things back. They come back. If you cut something off, it comes back. So for this little girl to successfully cut her eyelids off and keep her eyelids cut off for any period of time is pretty aggressive. And then, of course, the reason she cuts them off is because she obviously has some issues with her mother. Her mother is not okay with her having come back to life. And
well, it's unnatural.
Right. Well, right. It's ungodly. And I guess at some point, Mom must have asked her if she saw God or whatever when she died, and she didn't. So the reason she's peeling her eyelids off is so she can always see, and she won't blink, and she won't miss it the next time.
Yeah. And we have seen, as even from the first issue on, some revivers just go crazy.
Yeah, they are not.
They're not right in the head.
I tell you what, that first issue, to a large degree, sold me on the book. And one of the scenes I love so much is when they go to the barn, and you see this barn scene, and typical farm in Wisconsin and whatnot. There's always a barn cat. There's always barn kittens around and stuff. And there's this scene, and you see these little kittens, and the kittens are playing with something, and then you notice that the kittens are playing with teeth, not just like enough teeth in one person's head, but there's enough teeth there for probably 7 or 8 people's head, all over the place. So these little kittens playing with these teeth, and then you run into the first crazy reviver, who is a woman who her teeth keep growing back in, and she keeps pulling her teeth out because her dentures won't fit right in her head. And it makes her angry and upset, so she keeps pulling the teeth out, and they keep growing back. I absolutely love it. It was so woo, I don't know. It was cool. So the idea of M cutting her, not M, but what's her name, cutting her eyelids off just freaks me out because they keep growing back, and she keeps cutting them off.
And you also have in the more recent issue, I think the issue 15. Yeah, issue 15. You have this one guy. I can't remember his name, Travis. He's the guy with the eye patch, and he's an agitator to some degree. He's one of the freedom fighter militants.
Yeah,
there you go. Yeah.
Anti-federal government. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And of course he doesn't trust the CDC guy because he's a Muslim.
Well, and the government.
Government, yeah, right. So at the very end of that issue, there's a town meeting because the government has decided that they're going to repossess everyone's livestock to figure out, maybe there's something to the revival event, and maybe the animals are affected. I don't remember the details, but anyway, they're at this meeting, and this guy shows up, whose name I can't remember, and says he wants to offer everyone something, a chance to take your country back.
Yeah.
And he and the sheriff also have a history that the sheriff kind of plays on a little bit in an earlier issue, but then basically I think that one guy, he's done with the sheriff because he sees the sheriff as a pawn in this whole government conspiracy thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of other stuff going on that isn't just directly related to the the revival itself. I mean, that's the cool thing about this is there's all this other life happening that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the fact that the revivals happen, other than these people they're all quarantined. They're all in this town, in this little county, and they can't really leave it. I mean, there's all this other things. There's affairs going on. There's other murders. Well, there's murders that have happened and all this different stuff that
Well, and
it adds these layers of the story.
exactly. The what is it? The Czech brothers who are running a body smuggling ring. They're taking body parts and selling them to people. It's for whatever reason. There's that aspect, and the M and Cooper almost get killed by these guys, and yeah, and so there's that part where M basically. So they shoot M. They don't know that she's a reviver. She gets up after that and basically takes them out.
Well, you notice that she every once in a while she has these moments where she is like evil, sinister. Like she goes into the first time we start getting to understand that something might be wrong with M, other than she's a revival. She goes into that bar and basically convinces that person to beat the hell out of her, and beats her up, and her sister and the CDC guy basically save her. And she's just sitting in the back of the car, and the older sister is going, what's your problem? Why are you acting this way and whatnot? And the shot of her with her red eyes and just looking like she loved it. She loved being beat up. It just, every once in a while she has these moments of crazy that you're just like going, oh, okay, So there's something, I don't know. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on that we're curious to see. Yeah, so many layers to the story.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, so M takes these guys out literally, and Dana finds her, and Dana's like, I got to take you in. You murdered these guys, and M basically convinces Dana, no, you can't do that, and so Dana goes along with it. She's protecting her sister and her family from this, but it's just that compromise of her duty versus her family, like you're saying, there's so many layers to this, and that there's something's going to happen between Dana and M and their father, eventually.
Oh yeah,
that's going to be, I think, phenomenal.
Yeah, great book. People should read it. There's 3 trades out now at least.
Oh, probably.
The 3rd trade's just getting ready to come out.
Yeah.
Beautiful covers, great art through the whole thing.
Boy, I'm glad you mentioned the covers, because you got Jenny Frison on most of the covers, or most of the main covers. My God, that Travis, do you remember the cover to issue 6, which it's M on the cover, and it's her with a creepy face, and she's stitching up this.
Oh yes, I love that cover.
And of course M it looks like she was cut up when she was murdered, or I can't remember if she did that or if it was something else. Anyway, so you see all these scars on her too, so it evokes that whole stitching aspect. Right. But it's just her, and it's basically two-tone. It's kind of brownish gray with red everywhere, and like I said, that creepy face. Yeah. So Jenny Frison is just killing it on these covers.
Yeah, and she does. They do for the trade. The trade has its own cover, and I think she does the covers for those trades too. I don't actually own it in trade, but I've been thinking about it just because I love the cover to like the first trade is this kind of in the up close to us is M holding the sickle basically, and the background is she's in the foreground, the background it's got the silhouette of the barn and whatnot. It just looks really, really cool. They've done an outstanding job of all those covers just being. I don't see how people aren't picking it up because of the covers. I don't see how people aren't seeing that sitting on the shelf places and going, holy crap, do you see that, and buying it for that.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this book, because you and I talked about this, but it doesn't seem like many people are discussing this book. Uh-huh. And I can't imagine why. It's because it's such a good read.
Mm-hmm. It's just it's got so many really great layers to it. It's Yeah.
One of these days when we do this, Travis, I should probably take a look at like the sales numbers for these books that we talk about, just as a data point to see where these things are. Now, just because we don't hear people talking about it doesn't mean that other people aren't, and that people aren't buying it. I mean, obviously it's up to issue 16, so and the creators aren't out on Twitter and whatnot like Mr. Moore. Right. Imploring people to buy the book. But it is put out by Image. So, I'm sure they have certain criteria for selling a book and whatnot. Where Terry Moore is a little different situation, but
Right.
yeah, this just in general, Image is really putting out a lot of quality stuff these days, and
Mhm.
I don't know that that's a big surprise to anybody, but it's a nice change from obviously the big two. I don't
Right.
want to put down DC and Marvel in general because I like a lot of the stuff that they put out. But
Sure.
if you're not into superheroes for the most part,
Mhm.
even though Jupiter's Legacy is ostensibly about superheroes, there's other things going on there. But Image is certainly putting out a lot of quality stories in comic book form, regardless of what the genre really is. And so you have a great variety, I think, of things to peruse and be entertained by from Image. So, but is that really a surprise? Do you think people are like, I don't know Image books?
Now I just can't see how, because there's been this deluge of number one issues coming out from Image right now, and those all get new books always get the most promotion.
Sure.
Right. So I don't see how people can't know that Image is out there. If you're paying attention to comics as a general, it's out whether you read them or not. Because if you're just into the superhero genre, obviously those aren't the books you'd be picking up. But I don't see how you can't not know that that it's out there now, because there's too much advertisement for too much stuff for there not to be. And this is a book though that could have been missed because this book came out a year and a half ago, so it's
predated that big push, didn't it?
It predated the huge. I mean, Image has always been kind of squeaking out books along the way. I mean, for quite a few years now, last 3 or 4 years, it's been squeaking out a few of these kind of books. It's just now we're getting this big, like basically a golden age for them of tons of creators coming to them and going, I've got this idea, let's go with it, and putting all this stuff out there. So I could see this one getting missed, because of that people aren't, because the advertising for it is not what it, like I said, the number ones, there's lots of energy. People are lots of talking about it. People are talking about things like Black Science right now, a whole bunch. 6 to 8 months from now, people won't be talking about it as much. There may be as many people reading it then as there is now, but it won't get the same kind of lip service that it does. The new books are what gets the lip service, not these older. It's kind of sad to say that a 15-issue book's an older book, but
well, especially when you consider what Marvel is doing with their runs, with their line. We obviously we all know number ones are a big thing, and a lot of people buy them, but then the drop off after that, can kill a book, obviously.
Right.
But it seems like Marvel is taking on the approach of, well, number ones sell, so let's reboot our books every year or two.
So you always get that. You're always going to keep getting that sales bump from a beginning book.
Yeah,
and the advertising. Like I said, I think it's promotion.
Yeah.
People don't promote a book that's 10 issues plus in. You just don't hear the same level of promotion.
Exactly, which is kind of the reason I wanted to bring up Revival. And there are other books that I want to talk about eventually too that are in the same boat. They're good stories, they're good titles, and like you said, if 15 issues or 16 issues is a book that's long in the tooth these days, then what does that mean for a book that's beyond that?
And here's my thing. This, going back to Revival here, it's a wonderful book. It's got all these layers. It's got all these really cool moving parts that are going on and whatnot. And if the market is telling a creator that 6, 7 books, 8 books, 10 books is as big as as much as they're ever going to get, you can't tell this kind of story. For if sales were at a point where something that told these guys that, look, 10 issues is as good as we're going to get, a lot of these moving parts don't exist, right?
Yeah.
Because you couldn't fit them all in. You couldn't fit them all in. So the book would be less. If a creator can't look at, especially a creator-owned book, if they can't look at the book, something they've got big ideas for, if they can't look at it and go, I want to tell at least 70 issues, how are you going to get all this? I think you're going to get less of a story, that way. Now, there are some books that aren't meant to be long term, and that's fine. But for this kind of a story, I think, I mean, I've never heard Seeley, or Norton say anywhere, oh, our vision is we plan for this to be X number of issues, and that's where we're kind of, that's our mark for an end date. I'm sure they have to have one out there somewhere, because to tell the story they want to tell, I'm assuming there has to be somewhere out there has to be this is the end. I haven't heard them say, but I'm sure they have to be looking at these stories as a longer, reaching kind of a thing, as opposed to some short-term kind of thing, to be telling the story they're telling.
Yeah. Yeah, and that kind of saddens me that we're not getting those longer form stories these days.
And when we say longer form, we're not talking about decompressing the daylights out of a simple a simple plot. Right. Okay.
Yeah, and it's also kind of sad too that, I think this started in the 90s-ish. You got Sandman running 75 issues, and you got other Vertigo titles that were really popular back then that, basically 75-ish was about the run of a story. And that's fine. Even still, I think there is room for, and I definitely have the interest in, a long form told comic book story that even goes beyond 75 issues. And like you said, we don't know what Seeley and Norton are planning for this. Is it 50? Is it 75? Is it indefinite until they decide to end the series themselves?
Right.
But definitely, Revival has enough to it that it could go for years and years if they wanted to.
For sure.
If there are enough people who want to buy it.
Right.
So obviously this is my way of saying go buy the book, support it, keep it going, because I want to read the story for a long time.
Yeah. It's engrossing. It's very engrossing.
Yeah. Well, and the last thing I'll say about Revival is I can't believe they're not going to. They should make a TV series out of this. This would be a really interesting television series. What they're doing with Walking Dead, they could easily do with this series, and I think
this is better than that, though.
I think it would be better. That might sound sacrilegious to a lot of people, but
it would be better. and I'm honestly, I think it'll be better because, to me, Walking Dead is less complex. They deal with more than just, there's zombies. I get that. There's all the other stuff, how do people survive with themselves and other people under those kind of conditions. There's more in this. And I think, despite the bizarrety of some of the stuff that's going on in Revival, is more relatable than The Walking Dead is.
Yeah.
Because The Walking Dead is apocalyptic. It's way out there. I mean, everybody can go, I can see living there, but I don't know how well you can really imagine being in the conditions that they're in. The conditions that the people are in Revival seem reasonable. Do you know what I mean? As far as
more realistic.
Right. It'd be very relatable. It would be very relatable. I mean, despite the fact of why they're quarantined, it's I don't know. It's very relatable. The whole.
Well, yeah, especially much like Jupiter's Legacy, they're bringing up issues that concern us, us readers,
right,
for stuff that's going on in our own lives.
Mm-hmm.
Our distrust of the government and the religion, how religion plays into your life when you have a catastrophic event occur.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even down to the simple aspects, simple but complex aspects of loyalty to family and protecting your loved ones, and it's just we keep saying it. There's just a whole lot to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of layers.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. I think we've talked these books to death.
Yep.
It's time to get out of here. Let's see. I hope everyone had a great holiday season, and I wish you well in the new year, especially you, Travis.
Thank you. You too.
And so keep an eye out, everybody, or an ear, I should say. Keep an ear out for the announcement at the blog. I'll also probably put out just a real quick audio bit in the feed, the podcast feed, so everybody who listens to this will hear it and know about it. But for the like I said at the beginning of the show, the best of 2013 shows that Travis and I will do, and what becomes of that. It may just be like we normally do, a couple podcasts, because we like to talk a lot. And the longer I make the lists for myself and Travis, the longer we'll talk about it. But we'll see. But I'm hoping to pull off a really special way of doing this that may be more engaging for everyone who would like to participate. But details forthcoming. All right. Any last words, Travis, before we get out of here?
Nope. Enjoy talking with you.
And you as always. So remind everybody, Travis, where they can find you on the interwebs.
You can find me at Unfinished Thoughts at YouTube. You just go to YouTube channels and type in the name, and I'll show up.
And you can find me at longboxreview.wordpress.com. You can email me if you have any thoughts about this episode or any other, or even questions for me and Travis to answer. That'd be great. I'd love to do like a question answer episode from people who listen to the show. Anyway, the email address is longboxreview@gmail.com, or you can send a voicemail or leave a voicemail. You can send it too, I guess, if you want to record yourself and mail it. But you can leave voicemail at 208-953-1841. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye-bye.